Welcome back, Mets fans, to another week of Raise the Apple. And our New York Mets are somehow, someway back in the playoff race. What seemed like 2 weeks ago, for the last 2 months, the Mets were fighting for their lives, hanging on to a playoff spot. They got down to just a half game up on the Cincinnati Reds for the last playoff spot. Now they are about 4.5 games up on the Reds. They are clawing back in the division race. They were 7 games back of the Phillies, and coming off a sweep at Citi Field and a brilliant start from Nolan McLean, the Mets are back to just 4 games behind the Phillies. And as Gary Cohen said, it just like that, game on. But let's break down everything going on with the Mets. Then we're going to talk about some Major League Baseball news that happened a little bit ago, a little late on covering it, but let's start with the New York Mets. This sweep of the Philadelphia Phillies. Now, it looked like, they win 2 out of 3 from the Mariners. Then they did lose 2 out of 3 to the Nationals, but then they won 2 out of 3 against the Braves. It looked like the Mets were slowly starting to get their rhythm back, and then this Philly series came. Now, this Philly series, if the Mets got swept or lost 2 out of 3, the division was over. I didn't think they would have a chance anymore at getting anywhere close to the division. Wild card certainly still in play, but the division itself, no. If the Mets won 2 out of 3 or swept, all's well, and they're alive. Now they're 4 games back of the division. Because if they got swept, they're 10 games back with a month to play, and that is a lot to make up in a short amount of time. I didn't think that was possible. But 4 games, and when the Mets still have 4 more games left against the Phillies in Philly, it's the Phillies' division to lose at this point. We got a month left in the season of the regular season. It's the Phillies' division to lose, and the Mets are certainly going to make it a race, which you can't ask for much more as a Mets fan. This series wasn't, in my opinion, and I know I come across, obviously, as a Mets fan, going to have very big bias. This was not a close series at all. The Mets owned this series from start to finish. Game 1 was a blowout. Game 2, Phillies took the early lead again. Mets rallied back. They rallied for 4 straight hits off of Duran. And then last night, Nolan McLean just simply was amazing. The Mets dominated this series from start to finish. The Mets have won 10 in a row against the Phillies at Citi Field dating back to last year, including the postseason. And the Phillies just... Keith Hernandez on the broadcast said that the Phillies were overrated. And typically in Mets history and Mets fandom, that comes back to bite him in the butt a lot. When I look at the Phillies, are they overrated? I don't think so. Are they a very streaky team? Absolutely. And I thought this Mets team was very streaky. The Phillies, I would argue, are worse because Kyle Schwarber did next to nothing in this series. Harper had a good series, but Schwarber didn't do much. I mean, Christopher Sanchez got beat around a little bit, and the Phillies fans complaining that the Mets are cheating. Whatever. Not even going to entertain that. I was very, I don't know what the word is. I was not taken back at all by the Phillies in this series. They didn't look anything spectacular to me. They looked like a very streaky team, and they may continue to be that the rest of the regular season, or they could get hot again. I mean, a lot can change in the next month, especially when you got 4 games against the Mets still, and the Mets do have a very tough month of September ahead of them. Before they have 3 games this weekend with the Marlins before they start their gauntlet of September. So the NL East is alive and well for the Mets. They're very much in that race, and this could come down to that 4-game series in Philly. Because it's right in the middle of the month, if whoever wins that series, I think, has a very good shot of winning the division. But again, obviously, a lot can happen and a lot can change between now and then. It's this whole series with the Phillies. So you had Christopher Sanchez get shelled. Then you had the Alec Bohm stuff, which we'll touch on that in a second. You had Duran giving up 4 straight hits, hard hits, and Phillies fans just beside themselves. The Alec Bohm stuff. So if you didn't watch the game, Alec Bohm grounds into a double play, is complaining to his first base coach, and then complains to the umpire that there's something in his vision in center field. Turns out it's 2 parabolic microphones that are on the ends of the batter's eye of Citi Field. So if you don't know what the batter's eye is, essentially if you go to a Major League Stadium and you look out towards center field, you'll notice that right, like the center field wall to home plate, if I'm describing that correctly, is one solid color. And the reason for that is so that way it's fair for the hitters. They can see the ball coming in. It's meant to help the hitters. It's supposed to be fair. It's the same way across every Major League park. There is a solid color, typically black, typically like a solid black wall or something of that effect that is just right in the hitter's view. Those parabolic mics in question, according to the Phillies post-game broadcast, have been there at Citi Field since at least 2017. Almost a decade, those mics have been there. Not a single person has complained. The league has not complained. The umpires have not noticed and complained. The Mets players have not noticed or complained. But Alec Bohm hits a 2-run single, and then his next at-bat grounds into a double play, and now all of a sudden those parabolic mics are in his view. Which of course led to a 15 to 20 minute delay, a waste of a delay as Castillo got out of the inning in just 1 pitch after the fact. That was such a beta move by Alec Bohm doing that. Like, what are you doing, dude? That was such a petty freaking thing for Alec Bohm to be upset about. And if I were the Mets, I would have been like, dude, like, really? Like, this is what you're trying to fight? You had a 2-run single earlier in the game, didn't have an issue with the mics. Now you ground into a double play, and now all of a sudden the mics are in your view? And then last night in Game 3, you had Taijuan Walker complaining that Brett Baty and Starling Marte, when they were on deck, were too close to home plate where they were in his view. Like, are the Phillies a bunch of babies? Like, are all they gonna do is complain when stuff doesn't go their way, when things aren't going their way, or they see something they don't like and they're just like, hey. I mean, what are we doing? If you're the Philadelphia Phillies, what are you doing? All you did this entire series was complain, and you got whacked from start to finish. The Mets showed up to play. It was a big series in terms of the NL East race. Mets showed up to play. Phillies did not. That's why the Mets swept them. I don't know. I'm not going to say much more because I know if I say much more, it's going to come back and bite me in the butt. So, I don't know. Phillies got to get it together. Phillies are worried about the wrong things. The Philadelphia Phillies and their fans are worried about the wrong things. And that's why they got swept. But next up for the Mets are going to have the Marlins coming into town this weekend for 3 games, with Jonah Tong finally making his Major League debut. I am so excited for that tomorrow night. By the time this gets posted, it'll be probably in the early innings of Game 1 of the series with the Marlins. So we've had 3 starts from McLean. They've all been fantastic. We have Jonah Tong joining the show on Friday, and I got to think that Sproat's going to be the September call-up for the Mets. I mean, if McLean and Tong are already here, I got to think Sproat's coming shortly after. I was very wrong. I thought it was too early for them. I didn't want the Mets to rush them. I was very wrong about that. Did not think we would see Tong this year. I figured Sproat McLean would be late season call-ups. Tong was going to be early next year. Very wrong about that. Shows what little I know about calling up prospects. But when it comes to Jonah Tong, I have not been this excited about a Mets pitching prospect coming up since probably DeGrom and Harvey. I mean, I don't think many Mets fans have been this excited about a pitching prospect coming up since those guys. And McLean has been awesome. And if Tong delivers a similar result and then Sproat comes up and does the same thing, I mean, all of a sudden this team looks a lot different and a lot better. I hard pressed to not be excited if you're a Mets fan right now with this talent coming up. And then we got Jet Williams, who's been our pride and joy prospect for the last few years, knocking on the door, almost there, and Carson Bench and Ryan Clifford right behind him. In a good way, this Mets team could look very different next year, letting the young guys play, and if they show up to the level that is expected of them, that they've been performing at in the minor leagues, this Mets team just got a lot more dangerous very quickly. But I'm excited to see Jonah Tong come up and pitch on Friday. The Mets are starting to get their mojo back a little bit. And it's coming at a perfect time. You got a month left of the regular season. You have this series with the Marlins before you have a tough month of September. You finish the season on the road at the Cubs and at the Marlins. And if it comes down to game 162 and the Mets are playing the Marlins, we all know how that's going to go. So it's got to stockpile those wins now so you're not in that situation. That was the key. That was also kind of flew under the radar a little bit with the Mets sweeping the Phillies, was that now the Mets have the season tiebreaker. So should the division come down to the final game of the season, the Mets would have the tiebreaker over the Phillies. So that could prove to be huge come the end of the regular season. That could prove to be a huge difference maker. We could enter the last day of the regular season and the Mets need to win and the Phillies need to lose and they both win. So then they're tied, but the Mets have the tiebreaker, so the Mets would win the division. Like, it very well could come down to it. So that is also kind of flying under the radar. That is a very important thing for the Mets, that they were able to get this tiebreaker and sweep another series against the Phillies. But, I mean, the Mets, all of a sudden, a couple weeks ago, Mets fans wanted to jump off a bridge. Now, World Series is back on. That's kind of the life of a Mets fan, especially when they have such a talented team and the expectations are so high. That's kind of how a season goes. Do the Mets have enough to win the World Series? I know I've said before, I think this is a World Series caliber team. I still think that is. The National League is going to be very tough come the playoffs with the Mets, the Phillies, the Cubs, the Brewers, the Dodgers, the Padres. That's going to be a very tough road to the World Series compared to the American League. The American League is not nearly as competitive and top-tier talent, if that makes sense, compared to the National League. So, month still to play, though. A lot can change in the next month of baseball. And a lot is going to change in the next couple years in Major League Baseball. As we transition to the last part I want to touch on in this week's episode, Rob Manfred on the Little League World Series broadcast, or when the Mets and Mariners were playing in the League World Series game, talking about expansion, potential division realignment. So Manfred is retiring, I believe, after 2029. He's going to have one more ta-da on his resume. A very mixed review over Manfred's era as commissioner of Major League Baseball. Pitch clock, the ghost runner on second, the 3 pickoff moves. A lot of stuff is going to be on the Astros scandal. A lot of weird stuff is on his resume. This will probably be the final thing he does. First thing is expansion. It's going to happen. With an impending lockout in 2027 because of the salary cap stuff, I mean, they got time to figure it out. Expansion is going to happen. This has been something that has been talked about for years. probably longer than that, for decades maybe. I don't even know. And feel expansion's been talked about forever. So divisions are going to change it when that happens. They're probably going to add an American League team and a National League team. You can't have 2 5-division teams and a 6-team division and 2 5-division teams. Let me try that again. That wasn't English. 2 5-team divisions and a 6-team division. Can't do that. They're going to do 4-team divisions. Or 4 divisions, 4 teams in each. So there's going to be some minor tweaks to the divisions if 2 expansion teams come in. Some notable cities with expansion teams: Portland, who some people have kind of backed off a little because of the city itself, but that's a whole nother can of worms. Nashville seems like the big one. Orlando's been in the conversation. Carolinas have been in the conversation. Another Canadian team has been in the conversation. There's a lot of different possibilities when it comes to an expansion team. That's not the problem I have with this. An expansion team would be interesting to see in Major League Baseball. I feel like we've been talking about an expansion team in Nashville my whole life. The part that bothered me was the division realignment stuff, and the part I don't agree with is the division realignment, because it was referred to as a radical division realignment. Now, obviously, like we said, if you add 2 teams, 1 team in each league, the divisions have to change a little bit, so they're even. You have 4 4-team divisions. The proposal that some people have thrown out there is doing a Eastern Conference, Western Conference, similar type thing to the NBA and NHL, parting way with the American League, National League, which would be horrible for me. I think that's stupid. And the part that bothers me more, though, is the division realignments that are being proposed. One of the proposed divisions was the Mets, Yankees, Red Sox, Phillies, all in one division. I'm not a fan of that. Part of what makes baseball so good right now is the rivalries. The Mets, Braves, Mets, Phillies, Yankees, Red Sox. You name it, Dodgers, Padres, Brewers, Cubs. That's what's making baseball thrive right now. And maybe I'm a baseball purist and a baseball oldie, whatever you want to call it, for thinking this, but I think the divisions are fine the way they are. There's nothing extravagant. The reason they want to propose these radical realignments is to cut down on travel. Fix travel, help the longevity of the players, yada, yada, yada. The league is the reason for this travel. The league now says you have to play everyone once a year. That's not helping the travel. They have to play everyone once a year. Now, National League, the way it works, but we'll use the National League as an example. The Mets play their division twice at their place, twice at home. They play all the other National League teams once at their place, once at home. Then when it came to interleague play, it used to be Mets and Yankees was the one exception because it's a Subway Series. But it used to be you'd play one American League division a year. You'd play them at their place and your place, and then the next year you'd go to a different AL division, and so on and so on. Now you have to play everyone once. So now the Mets have to go to, next year will have to go to Seattle. Next year they'll have to go to Texas. They'll have to go, they'll have to go to the Angels because the Angels came to Citi Field this year. They'll have to go to the Angels. They have the 2026 season, the schedules are out. The Mets have 3 West Coast trips before June. 3. 2 months into the season, they've already gone out to the West Coast 3 times. That's not helping travel. That's not helping players' health. Like, what are we doing? I don't know. Maybe I'm a baseball purist in that sense. Maybe I'm a old school baseball mind. I don't think the radical division realignments that have been proposed by people are a good idea. I don't think radically changing the divisions in general is a good idea. Obviously, yes, some tweaks are going to come, but stop trying to change the game of baseball. There is a difference, in my eyes, of helping the game of baseball evolve and become more popular and just flat out changing the game. To me, those are 2 very different things. the game evolving and changing it are not the same thing to me. You can grow baseball and bring in more fans and bring in more eyes without changing the game. That's just my opinion on it. Does my opinion mean much? Probably not. Major League Baseball's eyes, they're going to do. I feel like Manfred did this on purpose to see what the public response would be. And then based on what the public response is, he's going to kind of go from there. But with the impending lockout in 2027, who knows what baseball is going to look like 2 or 3 years from now. So a lot can change between now and then. But those are kind of my quick thoughts on it. I mean, a lot can change between now and then. We're just going to have to wait and see. But that is pretty much it for this week. That's all for this week on Raise the Apple. The Mets back in business. Just like that, game on. Hopefully they can stay alive in the division race as it keeps going. Hopefully Major League Baseball doesn't screw itself over again. But that remains to be seen. Mets kick off a series against the Marlins starting tonight. Jonah Tong makes his debut on Friday night. A lot to be excited about. Make sure you hit that subscribe button on YouTube and Apple Podcasts. Make sure you hit that like button. Make sure you follow on TikTok at RTA_pod. Almost at 10,000 likes and almost at 1,000 followers. Thank you for tuning in, and let's go Mets.